the link in the description to get your comments recognized. The link is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the Sweet 16. Oh, wait just a minute. Hold on, because we have some breaking news, baby. Yeah, how do you like that? That's a little graphic that they gave us. That's always nice. So, Paul George and the Clippers. So right now, Paul George is due for an extension going into free agency. And there's belief that the Clippers are unwilling to meet Paul George's expectations for his new contract. I mentioned this previously on the podcast when talking about some of the difficult free agent moves that teams are expecting, because now that the Clippers have acquired Harden, it's like, who are they going to give more money to? Paul George, James Harden. And the Sixers, like this is a quote, Sixers are closely monitoring the situation, hoping the Clippers let Paul George slip away. So there's a possibility that we could have a Paul George and Joel Embiid duo in the near future in the Eastern Conference. Now, I mean, that would be something to see. Like, that would definitely be something to see. Like, Crucial PG in the chat, he says, yuck. I don't understand what's so yuck about it. I mean, it's like, it's Paul George, and Paul George is a great player, and, like, he's going to be paired up with Joel Embiid, who was a former MVP. Like, I mean, what is there not to like about that move? Especially, like, I mean, considering how lackluster this Clippers, like, this era of Kawhi and Paul George as, like, a Clippers, how it's been. I mean, like, when you look at it in hindsight, they blew a 3-1 lead in the bubble, and then they take the team farther without Kawhi Leonard. And it's like, Paul George, he can be that guy for the team. And maybe that's like the final step that Philly needs in order to make that next step and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, since they still haven't done that with Joel Embiid. And Corrido in the chat, he's like, Klay Thompson and Paul George are very close friends. Everyone in the league is very close friends at this point. That doesn't matter. That doesn't mean anything. And regardless, I don't think Paul George would go to that team, honestly. Like, if anything, he would probably stay at home with in LA with the Clippers. But who knows? Again, who knows? It's up in the air, completely up in the air for where he decides to go and what happens. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the Sweet 16 and the matchups that are going on. So, Clemson plays Arizona at 7 on CBS. San Diego State plays against UConn at 7:30. Alabama plays against North Carolina, and Illinois plays against Iowa State. So these are the teams that are going into the Sweet 16. I feel like a lot of the teams, like, in the previous round of March Madness, the games were kind of meh. Like, I mean, you had your, like, one or two upsets here and there, but it wasn't, like, as crazy as, like, previous years have been. Like, for example, when St. Peter's was going all the way. It wasn't as crazy, like, if that makes sense. And with how it wasn't being, like, there's not really, like, a big story that can be drawn out of with college, like the NCAA college basketball, like how it could have been done or how it was done with St. Peter's going all the way, or even how the women's are doing it. Because right now, women's NCAA basketball and the March Madness is much more popular than the men's side. Right now, like, going off of how many people purchase tickets and how the women's teams and, like, the women's games, they already sold out. They sold out quicker than the men's. So far, it seems that the women's basketball has been a lot more popular in these playoffs. And that's sort of something that, like, a lot of people, I think, should monitor. So the Crimson Tide, they're going to take the floor against the number 1 seed, North Carolina. Since they got their new coach, Oates. They've made the NCAA tournament all 4 seasons. They've had him for 4 seasons, and they've made the tournament all 4 seasons. And honestly, like we usually associate Alabama with football and their dominant dynasty that they've always had. Like Alabama is just known for football. So the fact that they've been just as dominant on basketball really shows just how many athletes that Alabama can really bring in. We'll see how that's going to affect it with NIL deals, however. So obviously, it's a very, very big rise in the program because they've only made the big dance just twice in the last 13 years before Oates took the job. So he's already doubled that number in the span of just 4 years, which is honestly like insane. It is incredibly impressive, and it shows how like coaching and like the coaches and the program, it has a lot more effect on the players than in the NBA. So, for example, an NBA player is probably going to play with several different coaches depending on whether they are a role player or whether they are a franchise player. If they're like a star, like a franchise player, it's very rare that they play with multiple different coaches. But when they're a role player, they end up playing with a lot more coaches and things of that nature. And usually in college, when we see a good coach and how they handle the team, because that's really like what a coach does on the college levels. It's like they don't just teach you how to play, they teach you how to handle the game and how to handle pressure. And it's like it could be a make or break for a lot of the teams. And 9 times out of 10, the teams are in college, they're only as good as the coach. If you look at Villanova, you'll notice that they have regressed a lot recently since their other coach left the program. And if you look at other programs, like, well, except Quinnipiac, probably, a lot of the times when a good coach leaves, then the program, it starts underperforming, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying that it's entirely on the coaches, because it could also be on like the recruitment and things of that nature, but also the coaches are also in charge, like they hold some responsibility in the recruitment process. So if you don't have a good coach, you might not have a good recruiter as well. But again, I digress. Now, Alabama, they're still trying to make it to the Final Four. They haven't made it to the Final Four, but they've made it to a lot of these big games. So outside of 2020, like the event was, the NCAA was canceled due to COVID-19. Alabama has reached the NCAA tournament all the 4 seasons just outside of 2020. So overwhelming majority of college programs would kill for the kind of consistency that the Crimson Tide has shown. So this is their second Elite Eight appearance in program history, in large thanks to their high-powered offense. So the Crimson Tide, they're going to try to outscore North Carolina, and they're going to try to make the game an offensive game and not so much a defensive game. And they average 14 seconds per possession. And in a game where the shot clock is 30 seconds long as opposed to 24, that is the third fastest pace in the country, according to KenPom.com. And they also made the third most three-pointers in the country. And they're on pace to finish as the highest scoring team for the SEC since Kentucky's national title in 1995-1996. So, but unfortunately, many of their point totals have been they've been a necessity. So their defense has been a little meh. So because they allow 80.9 points per game. So they think of them like the Pacers. They have a very, very high-powered offense, but their defense, it's just not there. And when the defense just isn't there, it could leave a lot of room for failure. And I think it's very important in college to note that, because teams that are very strong on offense, there is a chance that they might not even hit as many shots on offense because the pressure is just getting to these players. And when you don't have defense to fall back on, it makes it very, very difficult to play catch-up. Then again, March Madness, anything can happen. And when the Tide when they've been at home in like the fast-paced shootouts, like their last outing was against Grand Canyon, Alabama was uncharacteristically sluggish on offense, but they managed to win the game in the end, 72-61. So they do find a way to like make it work, but still, like just having offense isn't really going to be like the best move, in my personal opinion. And I don't think it's ever the best move when you're looking at playoff teams, because again, these teams and like you need something to fall back on. And ooh, looks like we have more breaking news, baby. Okay, so I just did that because I just read here that Joel Embiid might make his return. It is very good likelihood, those are the quotes, that he is going to return before the end of the regular season. So this is obviously a pretty big deal for the Sixers, because I'm thinking like, why? Why even bother trying to bring him back? I don't understand why they would want to bring him back. I mean, obviously, like, they want to win, but I don't see them winning at all in this playoffs whatsoever. Not only that, now they have to play in the play-in. So that means Joel Embiid has to play more games, which means that there's a higher chance that he gets injured in those games. And the energy that a lot of people project on Anthony Davis being like made out of glass, that energy should be shifted to Joel Embiid, because Joel Embiid has never had a healthy playoff series in his entire career, and he's never made it past the second round. And now expecting him to just come back and let's see, like if right now the Sixers are the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. And they're going to have to play the Miami Heat in order to take the 7th seed. Now, if they lose to the Heat, that's fine. They could play either the Bulls or the Hawks. But regardless, that would mean that you'd have to play either the Celtics or the Bucks in the first round. And are you seriously telling me that you would want to risk Joel Embiid getting hurt again to play the Boston Celtics, who have 11 more games? Like 11, like the game difference between the Celtics and the Bucks is 11 wins. And you're telling me that you want the brightness is doing a weird brightness thing, and you're telling me that you want Joel Embiid to play the Celtics in the first round and risk him getting injured again just to lose in the first round anyway? Because let's face it, Joel Embiid has not been able to beat the Celtics at all. The Celtics, they own Philly. Every single year they've owned Philly, and it's a common trend, and I really do not see that changing whatsoever, especially with Joel Embiid coming from an injury. Like, that's just not it. That's not the right move. But I digress. That was the breaking news, and with that we are out of time for this second segment. So tune in for the third segment as I give a quick recap of all the NBA games that went down yesterday. So I will be right back after this short break.
Looking for your